Yeah, so thank you everyone for joining our webinar. Um, this is Joyce Golem. I'm in charge of community and developer relations here at Emotiv. Thank you very much. We're very excited to have Jake with us today. To give you a brief background on Jake, he is a longtime Emotiv customer and an expert user on our devices. But in addition to that, he's he's a founder and CEO of Neurospire. It's a BCI company, software company. And before he started Neurospire, he was a researcher at Duke, the University Center for Cognitive Neuroscience, where he used EEG technology to investigate the neural correlates of attention and decision-making processes. He studied neurobiology and economics at Duke, where he also founded InCube. It's a renowned accelerator program for student entrepreneurs. And his latest venture is NeuroPlus, and I'll let him tell you all about it. So without further ado, here's Jake.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joyce, and thank you everyone for attending. Thank you for Emotiv for letting me host this and for developing some really cool technology. As Joyce said, I am the CEO and founder of Neurospire, and NeuroPlus, just so you're not confused, is our most recent product that Neurospire has created. So I'll give you some background. The way I want to structure this, first I'm going to tell a brief story about Neurospire and how everything started, and then tell you a little bit about our process of raising money, and then some lessons learned, and then really just do a quick demo of what we built with NeuroPlus, and then open it up for question and answer, since I'm sure you guys will have plenty. All right, so basically it started about 4 years ago when I was working at the Duke Center for Cognitive Neuroscience, and this is basically how I spent most of my days, looking at the back of somebody's head wearing a big EEG headset. Now, these are the traditional EEG headsets, wired systems using gel. So we actually have all those little holes you see near the electrodes. We actually used to take syringes filled with electrode gel, poke through the holes, graze the surface of the scalp, wiggle it back and forth, insert gel, take a wooden stick, move it back and forth again. Really long, tedious process, but the experience was really great. Because I was really amazed at how cool the things we were doing in this lab. So we were doing attention research, so looking at people attending to things, paying attention to things, not necessarily looking at them, but directing their visuospatial attention, different areas, and working on attention training and different ways that people paid attention to different things. And I was really fascinated by what we were able to do in the lab, so much so that I couldn't help but think, why isn't this more common? Why aren't we doing this in other applications besides the research? And I thought specifically companies producing marketing materials would really benefit from this, being able to see if people are actually engaged in advertising, if they're actually paying attention, or just kind of zoning out. And that concept called neuromarketing really, really interested me, and I decided then that I was going to start a neuromarketing company, since I was so experienced and I was doing this kind of work. It made sense that that's what I was going to do. Sounded pretty simple. It was not. There's a lot of problems that we encountered right from the start when I was just in the idea stage. First one being the hardware available. As you saw, the headsets that we used in the lab, the whole system with the amplifier and everything cost over $60,000. I had about $60 in my bank account, so I was a little short, and couldn't really make that expenditure, didn't really have the resources to put that money together. So that was a big obstacle. If I was going to start this company, I couldn't really steal technology from the lab and bring my equipment with me. And then there's the plain idea that even if I could afford it, that's one headset. We're really limited in how much work we can actually do with one headset. We're limited by the fact that those things, to put them on properly, can take anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. And then there's the issue of people getting gel in their hair. People are unwilling to do it. You have to spend a lot of time with people. It's really didn't seem like a very good business model to have to put these on a lot of people for testing advertisements. The other big issue was that the software available that we used for neuroscience experiments was really awful. Presentation, an immensely powerful software tool for conducting neuroscience experiments showing stimuli and synchronizing brain activity and behavioral data is very difficult to use. It's very powerful, but it's also incredibly complex. The user manual, I remember they popped on my desk one day, and it's about that thick, several hundred pages. It requires you to have a pretty good understanding of these two proprietary coding languages they invented for the program. Something as simple as showing you, two pictures in a row could take up to 30, 40 lines of code. And it didn't seem like the business could get very far if that's what we had to do for each study, and it would be very difficult to train people to work that. On the data analysis side, the leading application is EEG Lab for analyzing EEG data. Also, powerful tool, but really complex to use, especially for the more basic kinds of studies that we'd be doing in our marketing. And it wasn't something that was really scalable. It's something that I could teach people to use and really grow the business. So those problems were really sobering. And on one particular depressed evening when I'm ruminating over all these issues, a friend shows me a YouTube video. And it's a video you've probably seen before, may have heard of before, and it's CEO of Emotiv giving a talk at TED about the Epoch headset. And so I'm sitting in this my friend's room drinking heavily, and I see this video, and it solved a lot of our problems. Finally we had hardware, a device that was, one, easy to use, so I could train people how to use it, two, portable, and three, affordable. So we could buy multiple headsets, we could actually give them to people, we could teach them how to use it, and the signal quality was up to par with what we needed for the kind of research we were doing. So it was really perfect. The only big issue at this time was I still didn't have good software that we could use with this. We needed something to make it very easily to run neuroscience experiments and then to analyze the data from the studies. So I started building that software, and I wasn't too far into the process where I stumbled upon this. The Experiment Wizard is a program developed by the Brain and Technology Lab at the University of Amsterdam. And I found these guys online, and they basically had built exactly what I wanted to build for the company. I mean, it was originally meant for undergraduate students to be able to run neuroscience experiments more easily. They bought a few Epoch systems, and they built the software so that undergrads could run students. And as you can see, it's pretty simple, drag and drop. You throw stimuli in there, you add subjects, you add some basic information about how you want the stimulus to be portrayed, and then it will record Epoch data while they're seeing the different images. So that was exactly what we needed. So instead of building everything out for myself, I sent this guy that developed it, the lead developer of the Brain and Technology Lab, I sent him an email and asked him to join me. And long story short, within a year, we turned this into this, which is our Neurospire test room. It's software for creating, presenting neuroscience experiments, and then subsequently analyzing that data. So after you run a study using our software, you click send data, that comes to us, and through another piece of software, we put everything online, these really easy to use dashboards. These can be accessed anywhere online. Depending on the study you're doing, it'll show you second-by-second data for emotional responses to various different stimuli. As you can see here, it shows a little bit of eye tracking heat maps if you incorporate eye tracking in your study. So it's a really powerful tool for running quick, easy, affordable neuromarketing studies. After releasing that platform in 2012, we are now working with companies in over 24 countries, really hundreds of different brands, big brands like Disney, Porsche, Samsung are using this. And so it's been a really successful journey with Neurospire. But along the way, we really got confronted with a big opportunity, a much bigger opportunity, really. And here's what happened is we would go into these big, high-profile pitches, and we'd have somebody like Karen over at Disney say, this is really cool, this is really interesting, but what can you do for ADHD? My son has ADHD, or my nephew has ADHD. People would bring us these case examples of kids with ADHD, and that was what was important to them. As cool as the technology was, it wasn't as interesting to them as the idea that we could do something for people they knew with these problems. And so we started looking into ADHD, and it's actually a pretty big deal. In the U.S., it's estimated out that 12% of all kids suffer from ADHD. That comes out to 1 in 5 families actually having a child with ADHD. And we spend over $15 billion a year on ADHD medication and ADHD therapies. So obviously, it's a pretty big problem, and we wanted to do something about it. And what really motivated us is, let me know if this doesn't play properly, but parents were coming to us and they'd say, all we really have as an option is these medications, and we're worried about the effects of these medications, and you can kind of see why here. So obviously that's pretty scary stuff. Side effects like sudden death, slowed growth, and a host of other things, just to address this issue of ADHD. And it really spoke to us, the passion of these parents, coming to us with these issues, and we knew that we could do something better. Our experience with attention research in the labs, we were very familiar with the idea of neurofeedback and training attention process. It was the focus of a lot of our research, was training attention. And if you look at the literature, this is just from the past 2 years, just a smattering of the top lines on some of these papers. So you have controlled trials with neurofeedback, and it's beating Adderall and Ritalin at treating ADHD, and it's still so much inaccessible for most people. So even though this technology was out there and it was being done, not many people had access to it. And so we knew that we could do better, and that's exactly what we did. We spent over a year developing software so that kids could train their attention. Kids with ADHD and other attention issues could train their attention in these really interactive, fun-to-play video games. That platform is called NeuroPlus. It's now in use in several clinicians and pilot studies with several schools, and we're preparing for a broader consumer launch directly to parents alongside the Insight when the Insight's available. And so, one of the things that we really had to decide when we decided to go in this direction is it was a big sacrifice. We had a successful business model, and we knew that in order to address this new market, we were going to have to scale down a lot of our efforts on that side of the business. And that meant foregoing a lot of revenue. And in order to really transition into what could be a much bigger opportunity and a much bigger problem we were solving, we knew we had to go out and raise money. And so quickly throughout that process, we realized it was a lot more difficult than we anticipated. And our feelings over and over again were that investors really didn't like us. And the reasons were pretty clear. Investors don't like to invest what they call dumb money. They don't want to invest in things they don't really understand or think they can add value to, think they can somehow contribute and see it through. Not many investors can think of a successful EEG software company just because there haven't been a lot. EEG is still relatively unknown. Most people have never even heard of the technology, so it was a really uphill battle to try to convince people that this was a good idea. And then you have other issues like it's really almost too good to be true, the idea that we could train attention and sometimes eliminate symptoms of ADHD without using medications. The fact that we didn't have specific evidence for our platform, we were just basically adapting protocols that were in the literature. Some people had a problem with that, so they needed to see some specific evidence. But the main issue was that people are so unfamiliar with EEG that people assumed that we were making a headset of some kind, and they would see the Emotiv system and they would just assume that that had to be what we're doing because they've never seen such a thing in their lives. They didn't really understand the concept of us building something for the headsets. And it was a grueling process. We spent over a year fundraising. We had 200 warm introductions. So these are people actually introducing us that we knew to investors. Of those 200, we secured meetings that are in person, mostly on the phone, with 40 of them. We had 10, 10-minute intensive pitches, formal pitches with them, and of the remaining ones, 2 decided to invest. So huge funnel, and a lot of rejections. Talking about rejection therapy, we basically had 198 people say no thanks to us. And so, but we did do it. We did close that round this summer, and so far things have gone pretty well. So to kind of wrap up some of the lessons that you can extract from our story and our journey, I'll cover some of those. And the important thing to keep in mind with this is that, it's difficult for me to write about this because there's so many cool things you can do with Emotiv and with EEG technology that have nothing to do with building a company, that don't necessarily have a business model or a plan to generate revenue and make money. And that's perfectly fine. And projects using this technology are great. They're a great learning experience, and sometimes they can lead to bigger and better things. But if you're specifically looking to start a business using this kind of technology, these are kind of the things I'd recommend. And the main one, number one, is don't be too original. The biggest mistake I see a lot of people make when they're getting involved with building stuff for Emotiv and other systems is they pretend that EEG is a new invention or that it hasn't been around for a very long time, and they create these kind of out there applications that don't really have any grounding in the scientific history of EEG. It's important to remember that Hans Berger basically invented EEG. He conducted the first human EEG experiment all the way back in 1924. So we actually have 90 years of published EEG research, 90 years of literature reviewed, peer-reviewed literature on the science of EEG and all these applications, literally thousands of different ways EEG can be used to solve various problems and to look at various things. So please use it. I mean, it's out there for you. You don't have to start from scratch. You don't have to invent some concept about how you can use EEG. Chances are we've been using EEG to solve some kind of problem that you're already thinking of. You need to think about how technology like Emotiv can make an application that used to be very expensive, very inaccessible, or just not feasible, how Emotiv can really enable that to take you to the next level. So a great chart, I think, that we've used before is let's find an existing research-backed application of EEG. And trust me, there are dozens out there. We've done a lot with neuromarketing, neurofeedback for ADHD. We're expanding into some other things I'll talk about in a minute. So there's definitely things that there. Think of how Emotiv technology can make that application better. Could it make it faster or cheaper, or just in general, the portability or the ease of use somehow make something that we do in a lab or we do on an experimental basis, but how can we make that mainstream and make that part of people's lives? Those of you familiar with the meme will know the third step, question mark, question mark, question mark, and then profit. The second big lesson that I'd like to impart is to try to solve real problems. Again, if you're working on a project, it doesn't necessarily have to be a business, and it doesn't really have to tackle a major problem. It can just be something fun or interesting or something that you're passionate about. But if you're attempting to build a company and you want to attract investment and customers, you really need to make sure that you're solving a problem that people actually have, and not just making something cool that people want to try out. A big thing that I'm afraid of is please don't make an app that sends yo with your mind. I think yo's actually kind of interesting, cool concept, but when you're talking about something like an EEG headset that people have to buy and actually have to learn how to use, then I don't think it's really feasible or that interesting to make something that sends yo, or a myriad of these applications. Again, they're cool projects, but if you actually want to turn it into a business, think of how you can solve a big problem that people are having, and preferably a problem that people are spending money on. Another chart that we use a lot when we're thinking about new applications is, are people already spending at least $400 to solve this problem, because that's about the cost of the headset. If they're not, then it's going to be really an uphill battle for you to try to drive adoption, because they're not spending a lot of money, and you're basically telling them up front that they're going to have to, purchase this headset, and then if you're taking anything on top of that, it's really going to be difficult for you, especially when you factor in, marketing and distribution and all these other factors. There's not a lot of room for you if people aren't spending money to solve the problem they're having. If they're already spending a lot of money to solve the problem, then I think you really have an opportunity there. And that's really what we focus on with our applications. Marketing, people are spending hundreds of thousands on running focus groups that they don't really believe in. So they're definitely spending the money in our space and world there. And then with ADHD, an average family is now spending about $1,000 a month out of pocket for each child with ADHD. And that's just unbelievable, but those are the numbers. So there's an opportunity for us to go into that space, but there's definitely that doesn't even scratch the surface of applications that are available that people are currently spending a lot of money to try to solve, and that you can use Emotiv to try to approach in a different way. Some of the things that we're working on now for our next step, we're working with the United States Olympic shooting team on improving their marksmanship skills. We're working with the Navy SEALs on their training programs. We've got an application development to treat and test cure cigarette addiction, which is a medical university of South Carolina. And finally, we're working on a couple other cool projects with Duke basketball team about helping players relax and calm their anxiety before games. So there's a lot of things out there, and we're really just scratching the surface. And I hope that you guys are interested in pursuing other applications and are willing to really go out there and try and follow what we've done and try to do it better. With that said, I would like to basically do a quick demo just to show you what we built with NeuroPlus, the game we built for kids with ADHD, and then I can transition over and we can move to Q&A. So we go over here. This is a home screen for our game. Essentially, right now it's obviously using the Epoch because the inside isn't released yet, but it will be compatible with both. Kids put the headset on, they get the sensors turned green as you're used to, and then I lost my mouse. Won't be able to see my mouse, but they play the game by focusing. So the more they focus, the higher this glider is going to fly. So the more they focus, the higher they fly. And what happens is that this pattern of feedback, where the glider flies higher when they're more focused, actually trains the brain to be in a more focused state. We have a couple other layers that we've actually built in here to improve the feedback even more. One of which is motion biofeedback. So the Emotiv headsets, they do come with it. So you can actually use that as feedback mechanism as well. So what we do is we make it so kids actually have to sit still, or else the glider will rapidly fall to the ground. So they have to sit still, they have to keep their brains focused in order to play the game. And that act of practicing concentration and focus has been shown in these clinical trials to reduce symptoms of ADHD more than Adderall and Ritalin. The last layer of the game that we built in is something called go, no-go training, which some of you might be familiar with. So there's certain actions you might have noticed that the character has to do. These red dragons, bad dragons, they have to shoot or else they run into them, they die, they get a penalty. Whereas if you have a blue dragon that comes across the screen, you actually get penalized for shooting them because those are good dragons. So that go, no-go task is actually very difficult for kids with ADHD to accomplish. They exhibit a lot of impulsive behavior, so they shoot dragons they're not supposed to, or they forget to shoot the dragon they're supposed to. Same with if you've seen these enemy gliders shoot at me, I have to press a different key if they shoot at me than I do, but if they don't, see I messed up there. but the general idea is that we have these three training components: the neurofeedback to drive focus, the basically motion biofeedback to drive improvements in hyperactivity, and then the go-no-go impulse control. So we're really tackling those three symptoms of ADHD, which are inattentiveness, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. So I'll show you. This is one of our clinicians that's using this. Just pulled up them. So these are a lot of the patients they're currently working with. We can go in. This is our online portal, so you can actually track performance across all these metrics. So we can look at the attention index. So to what extent are their brains more focused over time? You can track that over time. You can track and you can see the improvements here that she started basically as a normalized score of 50. And she got up to 57 before falling down a little bit. Hyperactivity, this is how much they're moving around, so you can see how much they've improved over time. Usually you see a more drastic reduction, but she started off pretty low, so it's down there. Same with impulsivity. We can track how well they do on those go-no-go tasks, so we can track it over time and see improvements. Look at a calendar, so look at different training days and see how she improved on each day. So in addition to a training tool, it's a great tracking tool to see if people are dropping off, if kids are doing better in some areas and worse in other areas, or if they can focus but they can't sit still, or if they were really focused at the start of the semester and then they dropped off. You can see that here. So it's this whole tool for monitoring kids and helping them to pay attention, and again, all of this without medications. So that's pretty much the end of my talk. If Joyce, you want to open it up for questions?
Yes, thank you so much, Jake. That was awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really enjoyed the detail you went into about the things that you should consider when you're trying to start a company, and what are the like if you're now spending over $400 to solve a problem, then it may not be a sound business idea.
Exactly.
We have one question so far. Somebody's wondering why the headset is backwards.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So with some early on when we were doing this, so with the current neurofeedback paradigm we're using, we need coverage over the central area of the brain, and the current epoch doesn't have great coverage there unless we move the sensor. So we've used it both ways. We used it backwards for a while. We actually switched back because we were able to tilt it appropriately. But yeah, for a while we were reversing the orientation so that we can get basically better coverage on that area that we needed to, and we just changed location that we were referencing to. But yeah, it's a good question.
Great. Has Jake checked out any other low-cost entry-level EEG devices?
Yeah, I mean we've of course looked at all of them to start off with. The Muse, you have Muse, Insight, and the NeuroSky. Really, they don't really compare. I didn't find them useful. Most importantly, among some other things, were the location of the electrodes. Muse and NeuroSky have the frontal placement, and we need a lot more coverage than frontal for our applications, so it just didn't really make sense for us. But obviously we hope that there's everybody competes and the headsets get better and everybody's happy. But Emotiv's really the only one that meets our needs for what we're doing right now, with the cost, portability, and the actual signal quality and coverage that we need.
Mm-hmm. Are you anticipating FDA problems?
That's another great question. That was another thing that scared investors off a little bit was, we're in this kind of nebulous gray area between a medical device startup and, just digital health. The FDA has really decided not to really go after people that are using brainwave data or using really biometric data of any kind, as long as you're not making claims about treating or diagnosing, curing any disease. So that's why we market it really as an attention training tool. We're not targeting, we're not going to cure ADHD, we're not going to cure autism, but we're going to help people train their attention. Similar analogy would be, how working out improves mood, improves stress, improves a lot of different, medical conditions. but working out isn't something that the FDA needs to really approve in a specific workout routine. Doesn't need to have to go through FDA approval. So we see our software as a guided workout, and Emotiv is almost our heart rate monitor that's keeping track of where you're at and how well you're doing, and all we're doing is just providing some feedback on how well you're doing.
Great. How did you engage Emotiv regarding a partnership with your company?
Oh, I gave him a lot of money.
Yeah, that'll do it.
When we so one day, it was actually a funny story. One day in the office, I was basically complaining about some of the issues of the Epoch because we wanted to launch this product for consumers, and the parents that had tried it out, they had difficulty with the saline, and had difficulty with the fit of the headset on the kids sometimes. No issues that were really huge, but when you're talking about marketing towards consumers, they're really fickle. They're really finicky about a lot of these issues, and so I, on the whiteboard, drew out my ideal headset. Where it would have sensors, basically what the price range would be. It would be a dry headset. It would have sensors like this. It would look something like this. And I drew it out on a whiteboard. I said, if only we could build something like this. And about 2 hours later, we got the email from Emotiv that actually introduced the insight and announced the Kickstarter campaign. It was just a really bizarre coincidence, and as soon as that campaign launched, we were sure to be a partner backer, and then flew out to San Francisco in December for the dinner with backers and got to know everybody that way.
Great. The next question is, I'm curious about real-time EEG software. Emotiv offers a $300 package that you can add on. I believe that's our test bench. Are there any good open source software that allows you to get access to and analyze EEG data in real time?
So as far as my understanding goes, you need to pay the extra $300 to get access to the EEG data. Once you have access to the EEG data, there are open source platforms available to do stuff with the EEG data, and we built our own. But it's without doing some kind of workaround, you do need the access.
Any specific one that you can recommend?
That's
for John or Jake? You want to jump in?
Yeah, I would like to chime in on this one because that's a really big question. Whenever you're purchasing access to the raw EEG data, that automatically gives you access to OpenBCI, BCI 2000, EEG Lab, BCI Lab, all these other programs and softwares that you can use that require access to that raw EEG data to help you interpret it. So there are plenty of open source platforms out there. It really just comes down to the difference between developers who want access to the API and use it for gaming, or researchers who want access to the raw EEG data so that they can expand upon it.
Yeah. And we always use the access to the raw EEG just because our specialty as a team has been in attention research, so we like to use our own metrics and our own data analysis of the stream.
Jake, I really loved your presentation, by the way. That was excellent. As a researcher at EEG, I love to see people educated in the space.
Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful. I have a quick question while she's looking over others. Tell me more about the experience that you're having working with the military aspect. I'm just curious.
Yeah, so that's been so the principal investigator I worked under at Duke ended up doing a lot of work with Duke Athletics, basically sports neuroscience, and doing stuff with concussion research and visual training of athletes. And one of the athletic directors over at Duke is actually one of the coaches of the USA shooting team, just by a weird coincidence, and got connected through him. And then through a series of connections, ended up doing a lot of work with the military, and we're hoping to do even more. I can't talk too much about it, but the general idea is that just like any kind of athlete, military personnel want better ways to train when it comes to just brain states, or even actual training skills like marksmanship. And through what we've developed, we can do a variety of training systems to help them improve various brain states. And a lot of what we've done has been with marksmanship. So figuring out basically with our research what is the optimal brain state to get into for a shooter, and what is what is the optimal brain state? We did a lot of research with what does a brain look like when you make a really accurate shot? A 10.9 bullseye versus you make an inaccurate shot, which for these guys, these Olympians, it's a 9.9 is one of the worst shots they can make. So we look at the differences there, and then we see if we can train them to be in that more relaxed state for the 10.9s.
I think it's really interesting the broad scope of what you're doing is. It has so many applications. Joyce, do we have more questions?
Oh, yes, we have. They're coming in. Next one is from Max. He said that, Jake, you have mentioned that there's a substantial amount of EEG literature already published. Has there been much push from clients to understand what justifies your claims to measure these different metrics, attention, emotion, etc., that you do? Or are people mostly content to let your tool be a black box?
Oh, so that's actually a great question, and then we really the reason we got into neuromarketing is because of some of the other people in the space, it was very much a black box, and you didn't really know what they're doing. All of our clients, we send them basically more literature than they possibly have time to read, and we try to explain to the best of our ability exactly what we're doing. That these metrics have at least 30 years of backing, that they're well accepted, and that they should take them with a grain of salt, because neuroscience metrics are not absolute. It's not as simple as reading facial expressions or something like that, where you have a high degree of accuracy and not a lot of need for interpretation. Neuroscience is very fuzzy sometimes, very gray. So we do go through the effort of explaining that, and we try to make sure that we never have a black box situation. What ends up being the bigger problem is bridging the gap between somebody that doesn't have the background in neuroscience and trying to explain to them subtleties of a very complex concept, which a lot of these are, and trying to meet in the middle, because they're using a different language to describe. When they say emotion, they mean one thing, and we may mean another. And when they say attention, they may mean one thing, and we may mean another. So that's actually where the challenge is. It's not that we don't want to communicate that, but it's difficult to bridge that gap and make sure that both parties understand what the other's saying.
Okay, great, thank you. Edward is wondering if you can recommend some out-of-the-box software for DIY EEG analysis.
EEG Lab is great for analysis, but you have to know what you're looking for. There's not a lot of, as far as I know, there's not a lot of software that will just, you dump in your EEG data and then you get something out that you ask for. It's pretty much, just tools that plug into MATLAB that allow you to do the processing of data. So I would say look into EEG Lab. I think it's a free download. That'll let you do whatever you want as long as you know what you're looking for.
Great. Francisco is wondering if you are using emotive attention algorithms or are you using raw data like amplitude and frequency.
We use the raw data.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where our specialty really comes in, because we are a neuroscience. We have the neuroscience background for attention research, so that's what we do.
David is asking, how will Insight impact your scope of services?
Yeah, so the really exciting thing about Insight is it allows us to go to consumers in a way that we just haven't been able to before. The fit of the headset seems to be, from our experience, seems to be better for the children. The compatibility with iOS and Android is huge, because kids more and more are playing a lot on iPads and not really using the family computer if the family even has a desktop that's available. So it really, really expands our focus, and it enables it from something we just had to work with schools and clinicians to something that anybody can use and is more in a price point that's reasonable for a lot of families. On the neuromarketing side, we don't really have an idea of whether or not we're going to switch over or not. That'll kind of depend on what our clients are interested in.
Great. Benjamin is asking, are you using own signal processing or do you use the pre-analyzed data? Oh, okay, I think we already answered that. So you use your own.
Yes.
Let's see. Why are frontal lobe electrodes alone not enough, like with Muse?
That's a tough question.
Yeah, there's a couple. Obviously we can talk about it all day long, but there's two big issues in my mind. The first one is that you have a lot of muscles on your forehead. You have, you know, if you frown or scowl or do anything like that, you can kind of feel all your muscles. And the muscle activity, the electrical activity those muscles produce is usually about 2 orders of magnitude greater than the EEG that we're looking for. You know, difference with 4 millivolts versus 400 millivolts. So that kind of interference from frowning or doing anything like that can absolutely destroy any kind of EEG you're picking up there. It's great if you're detecting facial expressions, which the Emotiv epoch does really well, because you can look at that muscle activity, that EMG activity. But if you actually want EEG, you have a huge artifact there from having muscle. So it's good to have electrodes in other places, just because you know those are sensitive to eye blinkings and muscle movements and everything else. The other big thing is that just the EEG doesn't have great spatial resolution as it is. It's very difficult to locate signals. So when you have all your electrodes placed on one area, it's even more difficult. You basically have one dimension to look at where a signal might be coming from, and signal source localization ends up being very difficult. So you want more global coverage so you can do a better job of localizing the source of activity. And in specific with what we're doing, a lot of these metrics, they rely on activity that's localized to the central area, or localized to the occipital region, or localized to left or right temporal regions. So if you have that situation, then having electrons on the forehead is going to be pretty useless to you. So I hope that's a decent enough answer. I mean, we could talk about that a lot longer. But.
Great.
I thought that was a great answer, Jake.
Thanks.
Yeah. Somebody has a question about the mouse emulator. Have you seen it accurate enough that people are actually replacing their mouse? What is needed to make it more accurate?
I'd just be careful being able to turn it off. It's really funny watching people try to turn it off afterwards.
I think that's more of an Emotiv question.
Yeah, that's probably more of a Emotiv question. I've played around with it.
Send me an email.
It's much better than much better than these eye tracking ones. Those are the really difficult ones to turn off, especially if your eye tracker isn't calibrated well.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Somebody also asked a question about IQ testing.
Oh, what's that?
I lost that question in the maybe something about whether we can. Oh, Jake, those measures will be good for measuring IQ?
Probably not. The measures are pretty individualized, and we have if you take IQ as a valid measure, we have good ways of measuring that. So I don't think EEG is going to help there.
Not to mention IQ is a very fluctuating spectrum now.
Exactly. So if you, for any given definition you take as IQ, we probably have a test that's better than EEG for that.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. Great. Let's see. Somebody curious about polygraphy with the Emotiv EEG, a lie detector.
Oh, so that's really interesting. There's actually a whole department at Duke specializing in neural law, and it's a really fascinating thing. I mean, the short answer is that there are certain experiments you could devise that, using, for instance, the P300 response for response detection, that might act as an okay lie detector. The main issue with EEG as a lie detector is one, there's no proof that it's any more reliable than something like a polygraph or something else. The other one is that with EEG, I actually need compliance, like really total compliance in the individual, because I could decide that I'm going to blink a lot, or I'm going to tense my jaw, or do something else to completely throw off the EEG. So that would be the biggest issue. Assuming that everything else worked perfectly, that would be the main problem.
Yeah.
So hopefully no time soon would we see that in the program.
Great.
Well, you could easily do a workaround on the compliance by filtering out the frontal lobe artifacts. So we should talk about that later, Jake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Juan is wondering, if I do an experiment using an Emotiv epoch, would NeuroSpire analyze my data?
Sure. If you have the raw data, we're happy to analyze it. not for free, but
um, let's see. Jake, is there any free software that can be used with Emotiv Tech to do a neuropsych testing, emotion, memory, control, etc.?
Well, so the free software that our CTO that I found online, that's still available for running experiments, but you're just going to get the raw EEG data. You're not really going to get, you're going to have to use the neuroscience literature to figure out what you need to do with that data to get those metrics.
You're talking about the Beta Lab experiment wizard?
Yeah, exactly.
Where do they just go to betalab.com or?
Yeah, so if you Google it, I don't even know the address, but if you just Google Experiment Wizard, it's a Google code page, and you can download the source or download the executable file.
Okay. Experiment Wizard. So you guys found a Neurospire together?
Yeah.
Right. Awesome.
Also, in that same vein, Jake, we've got some new software coming up similar to the Experimental Wizard that'll be coming out.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Great. Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy with it as a stimulation business.
So Francisco is wondering, I use QEEG-based NF. Are you planning to launch a more extensive version of the software for other type of protocols, like lowering anxiety, hemispheres activity, inversion, etc.?
That's a great question. Short answer is no, mainly because that's something that's that exists is people that really want to go crazy with doing their own customized neurofeedback, and we are more devoted to these individual applications. So we're really focused on ADHD right now in our military applications, and we're building kind of this turnkey solution. So you don't really need any of the expertise, and so we don't really want to build a whole feature set. That's really, those are already available with a lot of neurofeedback tools that are out there.
Right. Okay. So Juan, he asked if you can analyze his data, and then he said EMG. Not really sure if he went.
Not sure what it means.
Is there a community online or other where individuals can find groups and teams to join and collaborate with for EEG applications?
I'm sure there are. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff on the OpenBCI forums, on the forums for the Insight. I don't know if those are open or not. The wiki for the Insight. That's probably the best one I've seen.
The one from our Design-a-thon?
Yeah.
Update on Kickstarter devices. Yeah, we have been publishing monthly updates on Kickstarter. So please log into your account on Kickstarter and go to our page. You will see our monthly updates with, our technical updates, delivery updates. Our goal is to ship out Kickstarter units November, December of this year, and then release it to the general public in the spring of next year.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Great. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it's all right. So I don't know if you remember what you were talking about before you got disconnected.
No, I'm not sure what the last question was.
Me neither.
No, I believe he had just answered a question before he got disconnected.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I thought so.
Great. Are you open to people sending you questions? What's the best way to reach you if they have?
Absolutely. Best way to reach me is jake@neurospire.com.
Great. Oh, I think you were trying to answer a question about EMG, MEG.
Oh yeah, we didn't understand what the question was about exactly.
Yeah. Juan, can you ask again what the question is? if you're still online. I'm assuming maybe it's for you to analyze EMG data?
Yeah, we don't really analyze EMG. We mostly treat it as artifacts,
Okay.
assuming it's collected with an EEG headset. I mean, if you have an EMG system, we also wouldn't analyze it, but that would make more sense.
Great. I think the rest of them are emotive questions, and we will answer them separately.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for your time, Jake.
Thank you.
That was
fun.
very, very helpful.
Absolutely. And then, yeah, hopefully if anybody has any other questions, just reach out to me.
Yes.
It was good hearing from you guys.
Same here. Thank you, everybody, for coming, joining
Yeah,
us.
that was excellent, Jake. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jake.
Goodbye.
All right.
Talk
Bye-bye.
to you soon. Bye-bye.